The crimson blossom's last stand. The cherry blossoms fell like snow that autumn evening, though autumn had passed weeks ago. Sakura Kasugano pressed her palm against the cold window of her apartment, watching the pink petals drift through the amber streetlight below. Something felt wrong. Not just the unseasonable bloom, but something deeper. Something that made her ki pulse erratically beneath her skin. Another earthquake, her neighbor Mrs. Tanaka had said earlier, explaining the tremors that had been rattling Tokyo for 3 days. But Sakura knew better. She'd felt this disturbance before during her battles with beings that defied natural law. This wasn't geological. This was something far worse. The tremor struck again, stronger this time, sending her collection of Street Fighter memorabilia tumbling from the shelf. As she bent to retrieve a fallen photograph of herself with Ryu, the lights flickered and died. In the darkness she heard it. A sound like tearing silk, but magnified 1,000-fold, as if the very fabric of reality was being ripped apart. Then came the screaming. Sakura rushed to her window and peered into the street below. What she saw defied comprehension. The asphalt was splitting open, not from seismic activity, but from something pushing up from beneath. Something vast and organic, thick ropey tentacles, each as wide as subway cars, were erupting from the earth. They glistened with an oily black substance that seemed to absorb light itself. "What in the world?" she whispered, her breath fogging the glass. The tentacles writhed higher, and now she could see where they originated. A massive form, still mostly subterranean, but clearly alive and impossibly large. As more of it emerged, Sakura realized with growing horror that she was looking at some kind of corrupted dryad. A nature spirit twisted beyond all recognition. Where cherry blossoms should have adorned its form, there were instead clusters of eyes. Hundreds of them, each one bloodshot and weeping crimson tears that hissed when they hit the pavement. The creature's voice, when it finally spoke, was like the sound of every dying tree in a burning forest. The blossom, falls, eternal. Cars fled in panic down the narrow streets, their headlights cutting wild arcs through the unnatural darkness. But the creature was faster. One massive appendage swept across the intersection, crushing vehicles like origami cranes. The metallic screech of twisted steel mixed with human cries created a symphony of urban apocalypse. Sakura grabbed her fighting gloves and bounded down the fire escape, her sneakers finding purchase on rain-slicked metal. She had to get closer, had to understand what this thing was and how to stop it. As she dropped to street level, the creature's many eyes suddenly turned toward her, as if drawn by some invisible force. "You," the voice rumbled. And now she could see its source, a grotesque mouth lined with thorns instead of teeth located where the thing's torso met the ground. "You carry the spring within you. What are you talking about?" Sakura called out. Though she had to shout to be heard over the sounds of destruction, she began charging her ki, feeling the familiar warmth building in her core. "I was like you, once." The creature's head, a twisted mass of bark and bleeding flesh, lowered toward her. "Guardian of the Sakura, protector of the eternal bloom, but they came. The men in white coats, they took me, changed me." Sakura's blood ran cold. She'd heard whispers in the fighting circuit about government experiments, shadowy organizations that captured fighters and other gifted individuals. She'd always assumed they were urban legends. They wanted to weaponize the connection between fighter and nature, to create the perfect bioweapon. The creature's tentacles lashed out, not at Sakura, but at the nearby buildings, as if it were trying to destroy everything around it in a fit of anguish. Instead they made this abomination. "There has to be a way to help you." Sakura dodged falling debris, using her agility to weave between the creature's massive limbs. "There has to be a way to change you back." "No," the thing's laughter was like breaking glass mixed with dying wind chimes. "But there is a way to end this. The source, the tree from which all Sakura spring, it grows in the center of my being. Destroy it, and I finally die." The creature suddenly reared up to its full height, revealing the horror of its complete form. Where its heart should have been, there was indeed a tree, but not the beautiful cherry tree Sakura had expected. This was a nightmare hybrid of plant and machine, its trunk pierced with tubes and wires, its branches heavy with fruit that looked suspiciously like human organs. The tree pulsed with an unholy red light, and with each pulse the creature grew stronger, more solid. "I can't just kill you," Sakura protested. But even as she spoke, she could see more tentacles bursting from the ground throughout the district. This thing was spreading, growing, consuming the city block by block. "My name," the creature whispered, and its voice was suddenly softer, almost human, "was Hanako. I was 15 when they took me. I had just learned to make the cherry blossoms dance." As if to demonstrate, the creature raised one appendage, and for a moment, just a moment, delicate pink petals swirled around it in a graceful spiral. Then the moment passed and the petals turned black, withering and falling like ash. Sakura felt tears streaming down her face, but she knew what she had to do. I'm sorry, Hanako. I'm so sorry this happened to you. She began to focus her ki, drawing not just on her own power, but on everything she'd learned about the connection between martial arts and the natural world. The energy built within her, white-hot and pure, but she needed more. She needed enough power to reach that corrupted tree at the creature's core. Ryu taught me, she said as much to herself as to the dying girl trapped within the monster, that true strength comes from harmony, not destruction. Maybe I can't save you, but I can honor what you were. Sakura closed her eyes and extended her senses, feeling for every living thing in the area. Every blade of grass struggling to grow through concrete, every stubborn weed in the alleyways, every potted plant on every balcony. She called to them all, asking them to lend her their strength, their life force, their hope for spring. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Green energy began to spiral around her, lifting her into the air on currents of pure life force. She could feel the trees in the distant parks answering her call, the flowers in hospital windows, even the mold growing in the subway tunnels. All of it connected, all of it part of the same vast network of living things that covered the earth. Hadoken, she cried. But this was unlike any energy blast she'd ever thrown. This was life itself, concentrated and directed, a force of pure creation aimed at the heart of corruption. The beam struck the mechanical tree dead center, and for a moment everything was silent. Then the tree began to change, its metal components falling away like shed skin, its diseased branches straightening and reaching toward the sky. Clean, pure light began to emanate from its trunk, and where that light touched the creature's flesh, the corruption burned away. Thank you, Hanako's voice was clear now, human, filled with relief and gratitude. I can feel the sun again. The massive form began to collapse in on itself. But instead of the violent destruction Sakura had expected, it was more like watching a flower bloom in reverse. The tentacles withdrew into the earth, the eyes closed peacefully, and where the creature had been, a single perfect cherry tree now stood, young and healthy, its branches heavy with pink blossoms that glowed with their own inner light. Sakura landed softly on the cracked pavement, exhausted but victorious. The tree's light was already beginning to heal the damage around it, broken concrete knitting itself back together, shattered windows reforming, even the abandoned cars straightening and purring back to life. As the first rays of dawn broke over Tokyo, Sakura approached the tree and placed her hand on its smooth bark. She could feel Hanako's presence there, peaceful at last, no longer trapped between worlds, but finally free to become what she was always meant to be. Rest well, Sakura whispered, and thank you for showing me that even in the darkest corruption, the seed of something beautiful can still survive. The tree seemed to shimmer in response, and a gentle breeze carried its petals into the morning sky, where they danced like tiny dancers celebrating the return of light to the world. In the distance, sirens wailed as emergency crews arrived to survey the damage, but they would find nothing to explain what had happened here. Only a beautiful tree that hadn't been there the day before, and the faint scent of cherry blossoms lingering in the air long after the last petal had fallen. Sakura smiled and walked home, already planning how she would explain this to Ryu. Some fights, she realized, weren't won with fists or energy blasts, but with compassion and the willingness to see the human heart that beats within every monster. The cherry blossoms continued to fall, but now they fell like hope.